I'm on a very strict time budget here, so if we can get going, that'd be great. So welcome everybody to this session. My name is Singleton. I wear a number of hats. I'm the chair of the Telecoms Supply Chain Diversity Advisory Council. I sit on the Ofcom Spectrum Advisory Board. I run a fibre to the premises business called Spring Fibre, which is relatively new. And I'm a non-executive on a telecoms software business and a silicon IP and chip business, which is one of the reasons I think I was asked to chair this council. I cover a fairly broad swathe of topics, a lot of which are telecoms. I've been in telecoms for over 30 years now, including wired and wireless technologies, big businesses and small. And I have a really august panel of speakers with us today to discuss how essential innovation is, essentially. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves briefly, and I've got some questions, and then I'll hand over to you guys. So by all means, think of some tough questions for what is a really good panel. So I'm going to take it from the far end. If you could just introduce yourself briefly, that would be great.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, so my name is Mark Grayson. I'm a Cisco fellow, where I help drive our wireless strategy forward. I wear a couple of hats. One is I'm a co-chair in O-RAN Alliance, so a 3GPP hat. I'm also a chair in Wireless Broadband Alliance, so a Wi-Fi hat, and I guess that's my focus in terms of how do we reduce the friction as we move from indoor networks to outdoor networks, from cellular networks to Wi-Fi networks. And maybe a reflection that we focus perhaps on the 900 cellular networks, but maybe not on the 300 million private networks, which today is the default, is the other advanced wireless technology from our wireless infrastructure strategy. And so how do we reduce the friction and deliver seamless service as we transition between those different networks?
Henrik.
So I'm Henrik Almeida. I'm from Ericsson and Ericsson Research. And I'm here in the UK now, trying to establish a new research center here to do 6G research. So last year I spent the whole year more or less with an assignment to investigate the opportunities and possibilities to start something up here. And we concluded that it was a very good idea and also, I think, timely idea. I've been working at Ericsson Research for many, many years. I started at Ericsson 1990, so when 2G was launched, and been working with fixed line technologies for a long time, and then went over to wireless technologies and specifically indoor solutions before I got an assignment to start up a research center in Turkey, which I did for 3 years. Which is alive and working now, doing research there. And now I got a similar assignment for UK to do something in that direction as well. When it comes to 6G research here, we will focus on networks technologies and also hardware security.
Maria Cuevas, I'm Networks Research Director in BT. My background is I'm a telecoms engineer. I've been in BT for 23 years and counting, playing various roles, but always very much on a technology focus, not always in research, very different parts of the ecosystem. And as well as working, obviously, within BT, I've over the years collaborated with most companies in the room. I'm sure we'll touch more on the collaborative aspect of R&D, but very keen on obviously being part of the advisory board, being part of this panel, and continuing to contribute to the telecoms industry in the UK. I'll keep it brief.
Yeah, that was very brief, thank you. And Maria, other Maria.
Other Maria. Maria Lema, I'm a founder of Weaver Labs. We are a startup in the telecom sector. We build an orchestration tool for mobile networks, but not only mobile networks, networks in general. So the T here, telecommunications. I wear multiple hats as well. In general, I'm in charge of strategy, business development, commercialization, and partnerships. But we're a startup, so I do a lot of other things as well. And my background is research. I was before part of King's College London 5G Tactile Internet Lab, working with Ericsson as well, and BT and many others. So working a lot in digital transformation and innovation, and that's actually how Weaver Labs was born. So a lot of technology transformation coming from academia.
Wow. Yeah, so a very different set of, I suppose, backgrounds and a different set of agendas, corporate and company. I don't suppose we could call Weaver Labs corporate just yet.
No.
No, not long, I'm sure. So I'd really like to start off by exploring actually, what the drivers for innovation are in the different organisations. So Maria, I'm probably going to have to give them numbers or something at this point. But Maria, can you just explain a little bit about your innovation process at Weaver Labs?
Yeah, so our innovation, or the reason why we care about innovation at Weaver Labs is because it's a form to stay alive. Basically, we need to differentiate ourselves from what the big vendors or the big software companies are doing, and therefore we need to find a niche in the market and create a very innovative solution to tackle that. And also because coming from research, we kind of like have that in mind always. But for that is basically a lifeline. Without innovation, there's no way we can make it in this market, because so why would they buy our products?
Okay. So there's a very direct correlation between revenue and your innovation.
Yeah, and adoption, yeah, which then leads obviously to revenue. But yeah, so, and also because it becomes a great part of our asset ownership as a company. If you don't create innovation that then, can translate into intellectual property, we are not investable. So how can we make ourselves more attractive to investment is through innovation that are embedded in our product. So it's directly related also with investment as well.
Okay. So perhaps if we look at something slightly different, Henrik, from an Ericsson perspective, obviously the dynamics of the business are very different. How does innovation work at Ericsson, where you've got this great big machine with lots of inertia that still needs to keep turning?
Right. Yes. So I differentiate between technology evolution and innovation, because innovation is kind of when you are sure that there is a market need, and when you can say that, okay, this is something we can commercialize and there will be a market need and we will be able to sell it. It will satisfy certain needs on the market, capabilities that are introduced. But so I work with technology and working with industry research or technology evolution, and working with industry research means that we have a certain responsibility to try to make sure that what we target and what we engage in when it comes to research has a good potential to satisfy market needs and become innovation eventually. But it is a big machinery, and to be honest, it's really challenging to create innovation also within Ericsson. It's not difficult to develop new technologies, but it's really a challenge to make sure it becomes innovation. But that's also what I find exciting and really interesting, that how to spot what can become innovation on the market eventually. And of course we do that not when research has come to certain maturity level, then we do that in cooperation with our product development units and the systems and technology units that we have. And yeah, it's a big machinery. Standardization is of course a big part of it, because it is about communication and we need to have standardized interfaces, global standards, hopefully.
And from a Cisco perspective, Mark, I mean, given that Cisco comes from lots and lots of different businesses, sort of glued together in varying ways, how do you manage to, I don't know, keep the research development in some form of controlled or coordinated fashion?
Yeah, so not one size fits all. I think so. Cisco, I think $6 billion a year, 20,000 engineers on R&D, but the majority of that I would say is primarily Horizon 1 for the business units, and they're measured every 12 weeks on terms of how they're addressing their Horizon 1 opportunities. Horizon 2 is slightly different. We have sort of some co-funding models. So for example, Cisco UK on their country digital acceleration program co-funds business unit Horizon 2 activities, and so we're working on some of those from a wireless strategy here in the UK. So Horizon 2, different set of programs. Horizon 3, Cisco research, 5 years plus, is handled in a separate way because obviously from a P&L and return on investment, it's obviously on a different time horizon.
Okay. And Maria, as a consumer of these things, as well as an innovator in your own right, and have been for many years, you know, BT's pedigree in Ipswich alone is quite extraordinary. How do you manage to put together consuming those innovations and R&D and you know, with your own to create value for the group?
Yeah, well, first of all, and not everybody would know this, but BT is very proud actually to be one of the few telcos around the globe that keeps a proper research department. And as Henrik explained, there are different, if you like, stages in the creative process, and research and innovation are not exactly the same thing. So we do proper what we call applied research. We've done it for the entire history of the company. We've got very different lengths of presentations. We take our customers through the history and the journey that BT has been since the invention of the telegraph. Okay, so that's probably the best example and the one that we always start with. But if we fast forward to how we do research today, we have many different approaches to how we build our research program, because you cannot be only looking inwards in terms of the ideas that come out of the research organization. You need to be talking to the rest of your business about the challenges that they have. You need to be talking to your market-facing units about what their customers want. We talk to the customers as well in terms of, again, their challenges, their pain points, what they want from us in the future. But we also collaborate with the rest of industry. And again, that's something, as I probably alluded to in the introduction, that we're very keen on. We are very supportive of a lot of the collaborative projects, programs, initiatives like this, because it is the best way of actually helping those researchers nurture and help each other come up with great ideas, which we may actually potentially productize ourselves, or perhaps contribute to standards bodies or publish papers. We sometimes file patents as well, and we have a very large portfolio of patents. So there are many different routes to the downstream inside of the research. There are many different routes to the inward-looking, kind of inward and outward-looking way we construct our research program.
So how, in the case of, let's say, Cisco, how do you describe value to your shareholders, and how do you illustrate that? Because clearly, in a lot of cases, R&D money can be seen as, barring tax credits, of course, and certainly where it's not directly write-offable, it can be seen as, I don't know, a bunch of guys sitting in a room noodling around, and not necessarily providing direct value to shareholders. How do you manage to describe the value in that?
So I think it's measuring yourself against your peers, against the market, and see how you're spotting those transitions. And I think we're over the 3 decades that we've been since GSM, we've gone through various different iterations. Who would believe here now we're talking primarily about software and AI as it relates to wireless. So clearly that there have been different phases of innovation, and it's really to prove your relevance in the market. And I guess that's the ultimate measure, as it were, in terms of how your return on those investment dollars manifests itself.
And so, Henrik, I mean, with that sort of thing in mind, how do you link your research process to revenues in the business? How do you understand, demand? Because you can't be perfect all the time and predict that exactly this is what we should be researching. But how do you narrow it down?
If I may answer that, I think that there are kind of in this research ecosystem, you could say, between academic research and industry research and the market itself, there are kind of 2 interfaces where one between industry research and academic research, where also, of course, it's very important to have our customers with us already in that stage, understanding requirements, understanding the market needs, understanding what are the issues today to try to foresee the future if we are targeting real innovation. So that's one interface, and here we work in EU projects like the HexaX projects now, working with 6G, big kind of consortia trying to figure out the future and see what will be the needs in the future. And then at the later stage, it's more about when things start to mature, because then when the concepts are requirements, the concepts, the technologies are being researched, then you start to put that together into a system. And then it's a question of, can this become a cost-efficient, sustainable for the future kind of solution? And there again, there is an interface where we work together with product development, when we work together also with customers and trying to figure out what is really a solution that makes sense to these requirements that we have. So there are these two stages which are, to me, very important in interconnecting sort of from academic research to commercial products eventually.
So in terms of, obviously, your background is research and development, and, from that comes innovation. How do you identify, and how did Weaver Labs identify there was a gap and you thought there was real demand there? Is that another sort of research, or?
So working directly in the university and doing that same process that Henrik was describing, from requirements, market need, development, we identified there was going to be a gap down the line in the industry of making networks more available to be consumed as a service, and also in terms of automation. And the only way that we could see that was by being very hands-on early on with the advancements of the telecoms industry, and of course being very close to the market and the whole ecosystem as well in the lab. And we basically gather ourselves and said, like, okay, well, maybe there is something here. And obviously, to launch a startup, you have to make a bet, right? You have to say, okay, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to bet on this vision. At the end of the day, it's just a vision. And we're going to go for it and start building it, because otherwise it's just an idea. But then obviously once you move from that lab research, setting out the vision, convincing someone to join your team and pay for it, and then moving on to the everyday business of running the startup, that workflow from research to product, it doesn't work anymore for us, because that kills us. We need to be very fast in building the innovation into the product, launching it, getting feedback. It's the pace is super fast after that. But we were born out of precisely that logic.
Okay, so Other Maria, then obviously you're in a position where you are amalgamating all those things. There's obviously lots of technologies, wireless, wired, Wi-Fi, fiber, goodness knows what else, that you guys are engaged in that's critical with your business. Do you find that public funding programs globally, not just in the UK, are important or vital to that, or would you be just fine without them?
No, I think they're key, actually. And as I mentioned before, the value of, it's not just the funding, but of course the funding helps, but I think it's the value of bringing the right organizations together and also creating matrix to measure success of those programs, and learning as an ecosystem to improve the way we push our industry to achieve value actually towards industry. Yes, it would be great to have obviously an unlimited pot of money coming our way, but none of us have that within our organization or from any other government out there that might give it to us. So it's more about finding the right opportunities, the right focus, the right people in the room, but also making sure that we are obviously being expected to deliver value and finding ways to measure and effectively put us on the line, yeah.
So, with that in mind, Henrik, obviously you're UK&I focused currently, but is there something you see that is useful about the way we do this and the way we bring things together in the public sphere that will help the UK? We heard a little bit earlier about how we become relevant in particular areas, how we develop specialisms. Is there anything specific you see around the way research, development and innovation are coordinated and funded that would be useful to help the UK become more attractive for those things?
The previous panels, I think, touched it. I believe that if we can make 5G fly, and now I'm talking as Ericsson because we are a wireless company, and of course we have developed the different generations of wireless systems. But I do believe that wireless systems will play a very important role in the evolution of society. And that brings together all the different technologies, really. It's about an infrastructure evolution of society, which I think that UK could lead by making 5G successful in some way. I don't have the recipe for that. I think from a technology point of view, I think it's very good technologies put together to bring new services which are not utilized yet. And I think if that is unleashed, I think it has a great potential to drive us forward. And I think it will also be, because later on we are already now talking about 6G, but to me that is an extension of the capabilities that are coming with 5G, and of course adding intelligence to that and bringing intelligence together, sort of machine-to-machine communication, which will be also important in the future. But we are talking about 5G, but because yes, to be able to satisfy the requirements which we see in 2030 or in 10 years' time, then yes, then we may need more spectrum, we may need new radios, and that means that it is a new generation. We may need a new architecture, and that's just the definition of a new G, more or less. And so, but from a evolution point of view, or innovation point of view, I think it is really an extension of what has done. So to me, 5G is in a way disruptive, and that's also why I think there is a market hesitation. And it's not the system in itself, but it is the evolution to digitalize society, which requires some effort.
Obviously, the UK, from a telecoms perspective, we're a really small market, I mean, just in terms of land mass and those sorts of things. Clearly, then there's an international requirement if you want to grow your business, and obviously a lot of funding will likely come from other countries potentially. How do you translate UK requirements into international ones? Is there support there for you?
I mean, before we even get there, we need to make it here, I think, and that is a challenge in itself. The public funding and the ecosystem, such as, the people in this room, are extremely useful to springboard the innovation within the UK. Since the beginning of the 5G test and trials program up until now, I think we've advanced the UK into, we might be a small market, but we are one of the most innovative ones in the planet. So when we talk with people like, our colleagues from Lithuania and Latvia, and who basically, they were here, and we hosted the delegation and showed them around what we have been doing. We are kind of like 5 years ahead of many other countries when it comes to adoption of technology. But then when it comes to, okay, so we understand the requirements, we understand where the industry is going, we build products and services, we put them into the market, then we have the whole telecoms ecosystem in the UK that it is still very oligopoly, if we want to say it like that, right? Put it in a nice word. And it is difficult for startups to grow into the stage where we can actually go for our investment, right? So if I go now and try and conquer a market such as the US, we would just die, right? It's very difficult because it's very aggressive. And of course, Europe has a different way of working than the UK. So what it makes more sense for us would be to go to the US. But it's easier if you go as a scale-up rather than a startup. So we need to get there before we can just reproduce what we're doing here elsewhere.
Thank you. So I'm going to throw it open to the audience now in the interest of time. Has anybody got any questions? We've got some roving mics. There's one down here.
Hi, thank you. I'm Keith Dyer from the Mobile Network. How can the organizations on the stage benefit from UKTIN, and how can you contribute to UKTIN? Thank you.
See a plant. Anybody?
I'm happy to go first if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So as one of the main operators in the UK, we obviously consume technology as well as create technology, and the value that can come out of UKTIN by bringing together all the parts of the ecosystem, we are expecting to be enormous. So from that perspective, that's how we expect to benefit from organizations like this. How we contribute in many different ways, actually. A number of people in my team are already talking to various leads for the expert working groups, taking part in those. We're in the Industry Advisory Board, very pleased to be invited and honored, and very, very keen to contribute in any way we can. We, in the very early stages of the process, we were also involved in things like letters of support and things like that, which again always help, if you like, prove within a bid that we believe that this is a credible bid and a very good thing for the industry. So many different ways, many different aspects, but overall hoping and expecting actually that it will be a win-win. But I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Anybody?
Yeah, so I'll add, because I think we've focused technology innovation and everyone assumes that's technology, and recognizing the role that we have in terms of being innovative, not just in technology, but in regulation. And I hark back to, I think it was 2001, the Radio Communications Agency allowed the commercialization of Wi-Fi, and that led to the innovation of BT Open Zone, and the rest is history. And so what is the role of the regulator if we're looking at public-private networks? We really need to look at innovation from the regulatory liability and legal frameworks which allow us to build this network and deliver that assured service on these networks, whichever they are.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I'm just introduced to UKTIN now, more or less coming to the UK. But I see it as a great opportunity to be part in, because I mean, for Ericsson, we would like to expand the ecosystem of communications. The bigger, the better, in a way. And we are working globally. So if we can expand the ecosystem here in the UK, that's good for us, and that's something we are interested in. And also, of course, to be able to cooperate with the great knowledge which is available here, and which we believe will be important also into the future. And that's also why I liked the previous panel a lot. All the answers I heard there were great and very interesting. But as the ecosystem grows, we will need to also partner with more and more companies who provide different technologies. And that's important for us. And to understand that ecosystem and to be part of it is, of course, key to a company like Ericsson is.
And from a startup perspective, I guess this helps us be part of the conversation. Being part of the advisory board definitely as a startup helps us give feedback on how we can actually build more innovation from a startup perspective, encourage entrepreneurship and attract investment so that we can actually make it, what we were saying. And that's, I think, like the two-way street, like we give that, and then we take also from being able to talk to the entire community from this innovation network, which for us has been essential.
Good. And there's another question over here, I think.
Thank you. Tim O'Farrell from the University of Sheffield. This is more a question for Mark, I think. I was just intrigued with how you decide on your Horizon 1, 2 and 3. Is it more from a business perspective, saying, okay, Horizon 1 is 3 years out, and therefore these are the technologies which we will consider going in? But how do you define those?
I guess we look to McKinsey, don't we, for their definitions. But yeah, you're right in terms of time horizons. So Horizon 3, 5 years plus, thinking about things which are difficult to fund from a business unit perspective. So think about some quantum aspects which we know are coming and need to be funded from a research perspective, and hence they are funded in a different way compared with the other parts of the business.
I'm Raghu Ramkumar. I'm part of the Foresight practice at Arab Group. So on one hand, we're actually seeing signs of or weak signals of balkanization of digital territories. And on the other hand, we're seeing, or telecoms has always been seen as a global industry. So how do we kind of draw a balance between the two views so that we don't confuse our global customers by having multiple standards across different regions? So when I say balkanization of digital territories owing to geopolitical issues or another, but telecoms has always been seen as a global industry. So how do we draw a balance? What are your views on that?
I guess it's the regionalization of standards, and one of the threats that we see is that we retrench into regional standards. And we see what's happening with ETSI, and we see what's happening in other geographies. And I think we're absolutely adamant that we should do our best to avoid the regionalization of standards, and then having global standards that we can all adhere to.
For sure, yes. That's very important. And how to avoid that? Actually, we need to align globally. So that's the only way. And of course, different standardization for global standardization for us, where we need to align. And also referring to the last question of the previous panel, that how should UK reach out to internationally with its research and interface what is happening elsewhere, besides the standardization, of course, which is key. If we don't get the global standard, then volumes, everything becomes it's not sustainable, more costly, and regional.
I think it's more of a question about whether it's avoidable, though, really, given if you can't ship chips to particular countries,
right.
If you're not going to participate in certain bodies with certain other countries, for example, then and you effectively will force that path. You'll force innovation in two different branches, but you'll force that path through foreign policy and export policy. Mm-hmm. So. Is it avoidable from a technical perspective? Yes. Is it avoidable from a real life perspective? I think that's a really interesting question.
I know that standards bodies are incredibly worried about that risk and very proactively working on it. I think we, yes, there is geopolitics and an awful lot going on, but that recognition that this is telecoms is a global market and needs to remain a global market for it to even be sustainable for the foreseeable future, right, is I think is very clear in the minds of not just us as companies in our own corporate policy perhaps, but those standards organizations are very, very well aware of it and acting upon it. So yes, I think it is avoidable and should be avoidable, and we all need to work together to make that to avoid that happening. It would be disastrous, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Any more? Dean. I think we might get away with it.
Oh no.
You're already hi.
Dean has a very different view.
Is it about Wi-Fi, Dean? Oh, okay, good.
It's always good to be recognised by first name. Anyway, Dean Bubley for the people who apparently don't know me. Actually, a question which is, we talk here about telecoms. There's a sort of multi-way overlap with lots of other adjacent industries. So enterprise IT and cloud could be one. Industrial automation could be another. Quantum, space, defence, and so on. How is UKTIN, and particularly from an investment point of view, going to deal with those overlaps? Is there going to be sort of turf battles between people involved on the software side, or quantum, or defence technology, or something like that? Or are you going to have sort of liaisons so that essentially we maximise the reach?
A sort of working group fight club is.
I'm happy to.
Oh, yeah, go.
I was actually thinking about that earlier today because yes, of course, we need to create these things from a context of this is the telecoms industry, but how many relationships do we have from a customer perspective, from a supply chain perspective, and as you put it, as an overlap perhaps. I don't necessarily see it as an overlap, but it's a potential opportunity to collaborate and to work together on something. So to be honest, I hope we touch on that in the advisory board and collectively find ways to make that happen. I know that in the days of 5G, we as an industry, we made huge efforts to reach out to what we used to call the vertical industries out there that would consume 5G, and we still do that. And I think that trend ought to continue, and we ought to strengthen that trend. I think there have been comments earlier, actually, on the fireside chat and the panel about how the transport industry should benefit hugely from what comes out of telecoms again and the services that we provide. Energy. Again, both obviously a supplier to us, but also can we find ways to help the energy companies actually operate in a better way and actually be greener and so on. It's always a two-way street. And I think, again, the brain power and the collective ability in this community to make that happen, I think we absolutely need to go for it.
Cool. Has anybody got anything to add very briefly before I let people go and have lunch?
I guess we look at, I mean, so is it telecommunications or is it communications? And so I guess it's a digital. So I guess we embed then communications and digital into everything. And therefore, those are going to be delivered by private networks as well as public networks. And I guess that's our focus in terms of how do we innovate from a communications perspective. Telco and telecommunications has got a particular, perhaps a mindset in terms of how we've conventionally delivered communications infrastructure in the past. I think in the future is going to be very different.
Great, thank you. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel. We're finishing on time, so lunch and networking now, if you could be back at 2:15 for the next session, that would be great. Thank you very much to the panel.